Today we're going to talk about web-based training, the best practices. Some tools for web-based training would be learning management systems such as Canvas and Blackboard. Oftentimes, these learning management systems are lean on media richness and are asynchronous, which means that there's not a lot of immediate communication between the professor or the trainer and the trainees. Oftentimes, people will use blended training models, such as the hybrid model, which has face-to-face and computer-based training. There's oftentimes online pre- and post-coursework, and participants participate in class online, and then they have assessments or assignments that are usually online as well. The knowledge and skill rotation model separates the knowledge from the behavioral or skills, and this would be like where they separate online for cognitive objectives and face-to-face for skill development. The complementary model is usually just a backup for face-to-face. This is where the e-learning is the backup, and it lets you reference what you have been taught in the face-to-face methods. And then there are a list of technology training tools, such as Web 2.0, wikis such as the Wikipedia, social networks like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, even Snapchat. There's online forums, the RSS feeds, which mean really simple syndication feeds, social bookmarking, Skype, podcasts, YouTube, Twitter, screencasts, and screenshots. These are all tools that you can use when you are training. And then when you're designing a web-based training, there's a few suggestions or rules that you need to follow. Number one is don't let your trainees get distracted. It's very easy for people who are using web-based programs to become distracted, such as, for example, I'm an online student, and at times, since I'm right here on the computer and online, I will hop over to Facebook, and then I'm going to check YouTube. Then I'm going to see what's going on Yahoo. So if you're a trainer, you don't want your trainees to get distracted. So you want to make it simple. Use as few words as possible. If you post pictures, let those be purposeful in your choices. And always make sure that the core message is understood. You want to make sure that you keep your trainees on their toes. Be unexpected. Break from the norm. Surprise them. Don't let them get to the point where they can anticipate your next move. They can anticipate the next slide. They can anticipate what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. You want to make sure that you give your trainees something to hold on to. They need to be able to understand and remember. They need what they're learning to be concrete. Some ways to do so would be to try mnemonic devices or to come up with a song. For instance, something I learned way back in elementary school, which was about 30 years ago, was how to remember when Christopher Columbus came over. We were taught a song. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. It was something that it made it easy for me to remember, and it had the concrete information that I needed to remember as well. You want to be able to make your trainees believe. Your information must be credible. You can't just pull information from random sources. It needs to be credible. The book suggests that you use star power. Use testimonials that your trainees can relate to. Even use the influence of leaders to your advantage, such as Oprah. If it's something that she believes in and something she endorses, use her testimonials, use her information. And if you allow someone to be emotionally involved, to get them to care, then they'll be more likely to remember. Allow your trainees to feel the problems. And then lights, camera, action. Stories always help. Stories help people remember. There can be role-playing. There can be acting out scenarios. These are both prime tools to use. Again, stories have been used throughout our lifetime to help us remember. That is how many of us learn basic morals in life, or through nursery rhymes, or through fables that our parents have taught us. Our book also told us to chunk. This is a way to keep your trainings simple and short. You can divide them into courses or chapters that have 15 or 20 web pages, because an average student or average trainee will spend about 1 minute per page, and that gives them about 20 minutes to work on a chapter. And that's about the optimal amount of time that they'll have to work at the workstation that they can devote to it. And if you do 5 chapters, this will allow the trainee to complete a whole course in 1 week. And that'll allow them to feel accomplished. Then there's the needs-centered training module. This is something you should use when you're creating that training. First, you must analyze your task. Then you must develop your training objectives, organize your training content, determine your methods, select your resources, complete your training plan. Then, of course, you deliver your training. And then afterwards, you need to assess your training. And then you start that circle all over again. It's not just a one-time run through. It is something that you must continually do to make sure that your training is effective and your trainees are going to learn something from it. And then another thing to think of when you are doing training is your training going to be passive or active, or is it going to be asynchronous or synchronous? As this diagram shows, that just listening to a training is very passive. It's very asynchronous. There's not any interaction. There's not a lot of different pieces to it. But then if you look at the other end of the spectrum, there's simulations or exercises that will engage your trainees, that'll make them active. It's very synchronous. There's a lot of real time going on and not them just sitting and being spoken to. And then when you look at presentation aids, there are several different presentation aids. There's PowerPoint, Powtoon. You can give handouts. You can use whiteboards or projectors, document cameras, video clips, and there's always the internet. But when you give a presentation or you have a web-based program, you have to be prepared for the worst. You have to make sure that your information is visible from anywhere within the room. And be sure to not to talk to your presentation, but to talk to your audience. You should have handouts available. You should definitely know your audience. There's no need to speak to physicists and try to give definitions of words that they would use on a daily basis. You must be knowledgeable of the information that you're presenting or that you're giving. And then remember that simplicity is usually the best route to go. And then lastly, some things that you need to never forget, that when you present or when you give a training or program, you need to know your information and you must know your audience. And you should always decide on what methods will work best. And then lastly, you need to assess and evaluate your